Yeah, welcome along. I've decided that since Rod wearing a hat, I should wear a hat too. So there you go. Kylie's not falling
Can't
for the
see
peer
the
pressure.
black.
No.
So welcome along. So thought today, and we might chat some more in the next couple of weeks, a bit about Intergenerate. So Intergenerate conference happened today in Brisbane. It's happening around the country and indeed into New Zealand. End of last week and through this week and possibly a bit of next week. So Intergenerate comes out of America, an organisation there looking at intergenerational ministry, and then this was Intergenerate Australia. So a group of people from different denominations who are working together in the intergenerational space. So in particular, today we had Tammy, and I know her as Tammy Tomlin, but I think she got married in the last couple of years and I can never remember her married name, but so sorry, Tammy, I'm sure you're not watching, so there you go. And we also had Michael, who I can't remember his last name, but he is the rector, I think it is, at St. Bart's in Mount Gravatt. So
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep, so he's sort of the Anglican representative on Intergenerate. So Jock and I are planning to have a chat with him, and like Jock and he had a chat. It's like, let's have a conversation. Then we were chatting quickly at the end. He's like, well, given some sort of Anglican meeting, then holidays, and then Jock with holidays, and it's like, we'll be October, November before we get to meet, but that's all right. Just talking about how we're each doing intergenerational stuff, and is there stuff that we could do together? Oh, what a radical idea. Churches working together. So Intergenerate, particularly this year, was around Dave Senos's book, A Gospel for All Ages, which I now have 2 copies of because they had 1 copy to give away, and one of the first 10 to register won it, and I was the lucky name drawn out of the hat, so there's another one in my bag over there.
Very good.
We talked about this, I think, last year, but we'll have a bit more of a play through that, looking at some of the things he did. Unfortunately, because of health stuff that he's going through, he wasn't able to be with us, but had recorded different sections throughout the day that we interacted with, and then Tammy particularly led us through some thinking around those things. So that was really good, and it was great to have Jock and Lynn in the room. Suddenly Pam came into my head. It's not Pam. Lynn, Rachel was going to be there, but unfortunately she's hurt her shoulder or something, so she was having a nice
day
at home. So there was the 3 of us having a lovely day, and good to catch up with. There was probably 15 in the room, most of which were Uniting Church people. So good to catch up with some of the wider network. I think there was 1 or 2 that I'd only ever met online. So it was nice to meet them in person. Most of the other ones I'd finally seen in person. I think I've said here before, but Rod and Kylie were there when I finally met Jess Pilkington after 3 years of chatting online with each other. Finally, oh, you have a body and you're in person. So there you go. So that's what we were doing. And I guess the bit that I thought I'd pull out for us to talk about today, particularly we'll do this because there were some nice slides, but that's all right. There's some other sheets to go with some of the other material that I got quick photos of, but they're going to send us. So I thought I'll wait till we get the nice pickies as opposed to my. So Tammy has been working on a PhD, and part of that, a lot of research. I think she talked to people from 17 different churches across 6 or 7 different denominations, one of which being the Uniting Church across Australia and New Zealand, and asking a bunch of questions, like across the age range. So she had from the 0s to 5s to the over 70s and stuff like that. And so broad range of covering. So you go, probably reasonable So one of the questions she asked was, when do you feel like you most belong? Or when do we feel like we most belong? So that question, well, people, what is it about church that makes you feel you belong? So the top 7. Top 7 sort of areas that they talked about. Number 1 was small groups. So when we're in a small group, then we feel like we belong, which is fairly obvious. So they talked about things like in the small group, you have that connection with one another. You have a freedom, an honesty, and an openness. So in that small group, you're able to start to share deeply and those honest conversations that you wouldn't blurt out in church and with everyone around you. There's accountability, and you don't want to let the others down. So you try to always be a small group because, you don't want to let the others down. You don't want to keep listening to Richard when you can go off to another Zoom conversation and be talking with them. So small groups are an important place where people in the church belong. Number 2, when they're known. So being known, which again, talked about accountability, acceptance, authenticity. So it was that you're known, you're accepted, you're part of the group. One person said, it's wonderful to have a space where you can ask questions and not seem stupid. Okay, let's play a game. Let's play a game. What was the age of the person who said it? So they said, it's nice to have a space where you can ask questions and not seem stupid. Who's going to give
70?
70? Oh.
Yes.
I was going 55.
55. It's between you both, 60-year-old. So again, the thing about intergenerational, it's not just about finding a space for the kids. It's about how do we allow space for everyone? And suddenly these older people going, wow, isn't it grace that I can have this space where I can ask those questions that I've never been felt I was able to ask. So yes, that importance of being known. Number 3, able to serve. So I feel I belong when I'm able to serve. That sense of being part of a team, using gifts to serve others, and the feeling that I'm contributing. So, and I'm sure we've all experienced that, as we get in. That's why I don't mind doing things like garage sales and carnivals and blah, 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 because it's that sense of as we get together, then we build that serving together. I'm not, as I've said before, I'm not completely convinced it's reaching out into the community because they come onto our space. I don't know how much that works, but at least the event works by building community of us working together. I know others disagree with me on that, and that's all right. We have a space where we can disagree. Number 4, friendship. So deep connections with like-minded people. And so note, they noted like-minded people, not same-age people. People who think differently, and people from different generations, we can think the same about things. We might not agree on everything, but there's things that we are like-minded on. So how do we share that? And shared life. So that we have these friendships where we walk together alongside each other. Number 5, family. So that, and I think each of our communities, I said the wrong C word, communities in Southside come from that sort of family-sized church where we know each other. Musselbrook was the classic, family-type church. Oh, why have a meeting when you can just chat over things over morning team or get things solved, and you don't need a formal meeting, That sense of, we're all family. It feels like family. It feels like home. We share meals. And as you share a meal, it becomes like home. It's comfortable. So particularly things like the evening service allow particularly this space of family and shared meal and home, and it's comfortable, and We can share our ideas. Number 6 is voice, where I have a valued voice and valuing different voices. So people actually listen to me and hear me and take on what I say. And I can listen to other voices. And I might not agree with all those other voices, but I value what they have to say. And of course, that's part of the challenge of intergenerational, is how do we listen to each other's voices and go, what do the older people have to teach us about where they've come from and where their faith has grown, and what things do they need to hear from the young people to build their faith? So all that. And last one, number 7, when they're cared for. So feeling supported, feeling cared for, and feeling encouraged. So running on those, for those playing at home, Rod's nicely written them down because he's a very good boy. Small groups, when they're known, able to serve, friendship, family, voice, and cared for. What's your reaction to that list? I think probably about this as a number of things. Tammy said, it's not rocket science. But what's your reaction to that list? Which of those speak to you and go, yeah, that's my thing? Is there anything you go, oh, I wouldn't agree with that? What's your reaction?
No surprises, I guess. Not all of them would be the same for each person, but this is the top 7 out of many responses, I guess. And this is obviously repeated all the themes of it. So different people, different ways of feeling it. I guess it's just how as a church, as a congregation, as a community, that you so some of them are, for example, small group gives you a means of achieving that outcome, but I guess it's the other things. It's the fact that a small group is relations, sharing, accountability. The other ones, when you break down what it was, that is where you started to see some common things. So I would like to see that the second, not just the first 1 to 7, but the explanations of each of those, bring those common words out and seeing how many of those are actually the same. And therefore 1 to 7 may just be explaining how you achieve that in the church. How you achieve relationships and sharing. Small group is one, doing this. Family is one, I don't know. Feeling cared for obviously is the beginning of it, but you then said there was supported and a couple of other second level descriptions there. Like to see how different they might be and how they might be similar.
So often with these things, there's overlapping. So
very much.
Quickly looking, small groups had accountability, then being known had accountability. So it's okay. You can get that accountability and being known in a small group. You can also get that hopefully within the wider church, but there are ways of, if we're having small groups, then people are probably going to feel more known within the church than if you're not. So yes, there's actually obviously interconnectedness, being a good Italian and moving my hands.
Not good for Zoom, Richard.
Night service to me ticks a lot of those. Possibly not intergenerational because only Ollie's there, but at least he's there. But I think if you had those same people in another service, they wouldn't necessarily open up as much as they do over dinner. So I really like the night service to meet those needs. But it also shows that, ministers, there needs to be more than just the service, because people aren't going to talk, aren't going to share during a regular church service. So that's why morning tea is important, and picnics and things like that. So if we're wanting people to be feeling good, then we've got to just make sure we've got places.
And evening service technically is intergenerational. So intergenerational doesn't mean you've got children. Intergenerational means you've got at least 2 or 3 generations. So you've got Katie and Talia in the sort of Gen Y. You've got us, Rod's on the cusp of Gen X. And I don't know where Jan is, but I suspect she might be into boomers.
Yes.
Yeah, I was forgetting about Talia and that. I was thinking they were in our age group. So I was like, you know, our age group. Well, okay, I'm double their age, but I'm still in their age group.
Still feels like you. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess the important bit about intergenerational worship is the ability to preach or to teach or to whatever you do is appropriate and fits across all of those people without having to separate it out the way it's done. And that's, as you said, you know, it could have been anyone that said, I'm glad I'm in a group that I could ask these questions without feeling stupid.
Yes.
And how many times in your business life do people say that? Ask the question. This, what you think is stupid is probably what someone else is waiting to hear the answer for.
Yes.
So that's no different with our spiritual life as well, or our learning of the spiritual life as well.
Yes. Yes.
Feeling comfortable.
Yeah. As you say, these things apply to us all, which is again that wonderful reminder of we all have the same basic needs. Yeah. We all desire to feel part of family, all desire to be known, we all desire to be cared for. You know. So it isn't like, oh, we suddenly do this and we are just focusing on this group here. No, if we're doing this, we're covering everybody and whoever's in the room. And yes, definitely means fiddling with the preaching, which is obviously, given the day was around preaching for all ages, or gospel for all ages, which is teaching and preaching within the whole church. Do you guys, is that backwards?
Is that a subtitle, is it? Okay, no, that's the right way for us. We can read that easily.
It's just backwards for me. Okay. Yeah, so the subtitle, teaching and preaching with the whole church. So we'll look more at that again next week. I'm back into that, but I thought this was something different that I hadn't necessarily heard before. So I thought we'd dive in here today and then we'll dive into Dave Senos's stuff again the next week's. But yeah, so again, it's how are we allowing those spaces? Because really, if you look at those, they're all about how do you, they're allowing the person to be themselves in that space, them being known, them serving, and part of the family. It's how do we, you are a valued person as you are. So I think that's the challenge for the church. How do we see each person and go, you are valued as you are, come bring the things that are you. Which is hopefully some of the encouragement, the joy that's coming out of the videos that we're using through the stewardship of hearing 6 people talking about how do we serve? Why do we serve? What are we getting out of this service? Yes. So along with some good funny lines. It's been interesting because, yeah, it's that sense of, and a number of them sort of came and said, oh, not sure really we have anything to say. And I'm sure we can all say we've listened to them all and they've all got something wonderful to contribute.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's how do we allow that space and allow those voices and allow, I think it was something that Rod, the minister at the Gap, was talking about, is how do you allow that space for the voices you don't normally hear, which was part of why we picked those people to be the speakers, because it's like they're not the ones that we always hear. How do we pick some of those that we don't get that chance to? So, yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
So or will we get to it in a later session from Tammy? Yes, she's given 7 areas that where you might feel that you belong, but was there any enlightenment for you and the other ministers and other people there as to how to establish, how to actually bring the gospel for all ages? Or was it all based on, these are areas where you feel comfortable, therefore, or feel you belong, feel accepted, therefore do it within those? Well, obviously some of them are groups, some of them are way you feel, some of them are situations you find yourself in. So, you know, if I had to start a worshiping group next week and I wanted to be intergenerational, what would I need to set up, and how would I go about the preaching the gospel, or whatever the appropriate word is in this context?
Yep. So
it is different from what happens currently at another church on a Sunday morning, for example.
So quickly summarizing sort of what happened or the plan for the day, which, yes, so there was some unpacking of how that might happen. And so this is what we'll look at in the next few weeks. So started with, you know, defining what is intergenerational and what is preaching and who can preach. So that was sort of the first big input thing from Dave Senos. And then the next 3 sessions, ignoring the workshop that we had in the middle, was sort of unpacking his sort of 3 ways of doing preaching and engaging others. So the first one is looking at interpreting together, so doing some of the prep work with others in an intergenerational way. Then speaking the gospel, so how do you engage people in the service or in the sermon to share some of their ideas, some of their story, and then thirdly, experiencing the gospel. So more than just how do we discuss it, but how do we do active things that engage people on an intergenerational level. So we'll explore those in the next few weeks, Rod. But yeah, that was some of that unpacking.
Okay, good.
How do we actually do this? So again, yes, obviously a lot formed around sort of the preaching and the worship service type stuff. But yeah, we'll explore that. Look at the time. Well, someone's got to get to their small group. So we'll unpack more of that next week.
Yep. One thing when I was listening to, and I can be late this time, the emphasis that some people had given on things like the Pray For Me program, etc. Did that come out in the Brisbane workshop or Brisbane conference, or wasn't?
No, no one mentioned Pray For Me.
No, okay.
No. So there was some other.
That was seen as a way of just creating some of this relationships across the generations in a positive, reinforcing way. Yep. So there's my beep from my iPad to say there's another Zoom meeting on. So
thank you for joining us, Rod. Thank you for joining us.
Catch us all later.
Catch ya.
Bye-bye.